If you have been following the Lucy Letby case, you may have seen that in recent days, the former senior coroner's officer for Cheshire has spoken out with concerns over the police investigation and said that the doctors who accused Lucy Letby also withheld information about a botched medical procedure from the coroner's office. Furthermore, information from an anonymous statistician going by the pseudonym Tried by Stats has revealed disturbing new information about Lucy Letby's police interrogation and misinformation she was fed by the police. There has also been, in my opinion, quite an embarrassing and unprofessional response from Cheshire Police's Media Communications Department and an ad hominem attack against Miss Stephanie Davies. So let's see what Miss Stephanie Davies said about her early review.
They appeared to be natural causes, but there were missing jigsaw pieces in some of the post-mortem reports.
One of the missing jigsaw pieces is presumably that it's known from the trial and inquiry that the death of baby A was considered unexplained after the post-mortem. The parents of baby E were talked out of having a post-mortem by Dr. Z.A., an anonymous female consultant whose identity is protected by court order. However, it's the case of baby O which is the focus here, and details of a medical procedure attempted by a consultant, Dr. Stephen Breary.
There is mention of an attempted needle aspiration due to the distended stomach of this baby.
Details about this medical procedure have been described by medical experts at 2 press conferences.
A needle was blindly inserted into the abdomen to try and relieve the abdominal distension. Well, this is something you don't do, and you don't do blindly.
The needle perforated the liver. The baby was still being ventilated with a needle in the liver. The liver was now being lacerated.
I should say the idea that the needle perforated the liver is argued as a theory at this point by UK-based neonatologist Dr. Neil Leighton and Dr. Svelena Dimitrova. The main objective fact is that a needle was inserted with the intention of relieving air and instead blood came out. Neither of the treating doctors, Dr. V, another anonymous female consultant, nor Dr. Stephen Breary, the consultant who inserted the needle, made the coroner aware at first communication.
And I saw that the reporting doctor never mentioned anything about this procedure to the coroner.
This meant that at the time the autopsy was being performed, the pathologist did not know the timing of this needle insertion.
Had the paediatric pathologist been aware of this attempted needle aspiration, would he have then not given the underlying cause of death as prematurity, but this procedure?
From his own powers of deduction, the pathologist did make a note of a needle insertion, albeit without being aware of the exact timing.
And this was noted by the pathologist as parenchymal hematoma and laceration.
The issue here is that the timing of the needle insertion coincides closely with a dramatic loss of red blood cells.
Acute major hemorrhage into the peritoneal cavity that was sufficient to cause the hemoglobin to drop by half.
So hemoglobin is the protein being measured. You might be aware or remember from school that hemoglobin is the part of the red blood cell that carries oxygen. In this context, I think it was being used to measure how much of the blood is actually red blood cells and how much is other fluid. During the injury, and there is obviously dispute over the mechanism, blood poured out from the liver into the surrounding area. To respond to this, the body would try to maintain the volume of fluid in the blood. The problem is that producing a large number of red blood cells would take a long period of time. So it's faster for fluid to be released from surrounding cells into the blood, and also as a lesser contribution to retain fluid that would otherwise be urinated. So as I understand it, it's argued by neonatologist Dr. Svelena Dimitrova and Neil Leighton that there's a blood test just before and just after the timing of this needle insertion. In one of these blood tests, the hemoglobin and therefore red blood cell count is normal. In the other test, just after the blood test, the blood is made up of a more watery solution as the body tries to atone for the loss of red blood cells through bleeding. The bleeding triggered a cascade of events which ultimately led to the baby's death. The other detail that supports the theory that the needle was inserted into the liver is that apparently an X-ray showed that the liver had been pushed down into the area where the needle would be inserted.
And this is confirmed by an X-ray of both the abdomen and the chest. The baby's liver was pushed right down into the pelvis.
The reason the details about the attempted needle aspiration becomes a police conduct issue is because the police have a statutory duty to follow all reasonable lines of inquiry. Dr. Svilema Dimitrova has now made a criminal complaint against Dr. Stephen Breary with an allegation that he perverted the course of justice by withholding details from the pathologist about his attempt to relieve air pressure in the abdomen by inserting this needle. So far, according to Dr. Dimitrova, the police have flatly refused to even engage in this line of inquiry. This mirrors their attitude to other lines of inquiry that might potentially undermine the safety of the Lucy Letby verdict. They have previously been sent a complaint that Ravi Jayaram may have committed perjury during the trial and that they are obligated to investigate by Sir David Davies. Furthermore, they have also been sent a complaint by an NHS consultant that the testimonies of the two main prosecution witnesses, Dr. Evans and Dr. Bowen, were so medically inaccurate they should be investigated for obstructing the course of justice. These alternative lines of inquiry raise doubts about the convictions of Lucy Letby, which are under review by the Criminal Case Review Commission. More immediately, they impact on the hospital's internal review process, which is significant because press releases from Cheshire Police reveal they have recently arrested hospital managers for gross negligence manslaughter. It's known from various press releases by Cheshire Police that this gross negligence manslaughter investigation is based on the idea that hospital managers did not do enough to stop Lucy Letby. However, if internal hospital reviews were obstructed because doctors did not reveal details of a medical procedure, then that surely has to impact on that investigation. The hospital managers commissioned a review by an external neonatologist, Dr. Jane Horden, before the police became involved in the case. You can see details of her advisory medical report on screen. This was sent to the hospital managers on 29th of October 2016, 5 days before Dr. V would belatedly reveal details about Dr. Breary's needle insertion. The belated revelation by Dr. V that Dr. Breary had made the needle insertion would come as a coroner's inquest was organised to take place to review the death of baby O. However, it's known the consultants would subvert this by going to the police before the inquest would take place. Returning to the issue of Dr. Horden's medical advisory reports, you can see she has two scales to rate the quality of care and relevance of grade of care to outcome. The quality of care scale ranges from 0 for no suboptimal care to 3 for major suboptimal care. The relevance of grade of care to outcome ranges from 0 to not relevant to 3 signifying almost certainly relevant. So now, looking at this part of Dr. Horden's report, she identifies some care failings, most likely due to a lack of attentiveness, but doesn't consider them particularly relevant. She then puts a question mark by the quality of care and rates it as highly relevant to the outcome with a max score of 3. So I read it as Dr. Horden believing something hugely significant happened during the resuscitation, but not being aware of what it was. In further communication made publicly available as part of the Thirlwall inquiry, Dr. Horden says, quote, "The cause of the initial collapse remains unexplained. I think this is at a point in time where she doesn't have the full context of the needle insertion. She previously had said the subcapsular hematoma, as in the liver injury, is likely to have occurred as a consequence of hypoxia after the baby's collapse and deterioration. Chest compressions during resuscitation may also have contributed to its formation. Once there has been significant bleeding into the abdomen, this would have significantly contributed to the failure to resuscitate with subsequent death. Hence the immediate cause of death was submitted as, quote, hemorrhage to the peritoneal space due to rupture of subcapsular hematoma due to prematurity."
I now feel misled. I can't say who misled me, but I feel misled.
The ultimate conclusion of Dr. Horden's review is that Baby O is an unexplained death. Although she has the theory that vigorous CPR may have caused a liver injury, this appears to be stated with a low level of confidence. Dr. Horden's decision to call Baby O an unexplained death would pave the way for the police investigation and Dr. Evans to take over as the main expert. When seeing the photographs of Baby O's liver, Dr. Evans would declare crimes within 10 minutes.
Immediately, I think within 10 minutes or so of arriving and having a look at these notes, this baby is the victim of inflicted injury.
Dr. Evans would come up with the theory that Lucy Letby punched the infant over the area of the liver, though in interviews with the media he seems to spin the nature of the evidence towards this theory.
One of the medics had written down that he'd noticed what he thought was bruising over the area of the liver. Well, that doesn't happen.
Even if you go by the testimony of prosecution pathologist Andreas Manarides, who was not the pathologist who examined the body, he says on day 98 of the trial, 30th of March, quote, "Whether this could be a rare manifestation of a prematurity-related hematoma, I could not refute that. That could be an explanation. It would not explain, however, the hematoma we saw on the undersurface of the liver." So Dr. Evans tries to make out that the liver injury was of a more superficial nature closer to the surface. More or less everyone else who has reviewed the case says the bruising is closer to the centre of the liver and of a more severe nature. Doing a recap of the various viewpoints on the Baby O liver injury, Dr. Evans claims to believe Lucy Letby struck the baby. Dr. Horden and Dr. Manarides suggest that the liver was badly damaged but struggle to propose a credible mechanism of injury. Dr. Lee's panel suggests the main injury occurred due to injury on delivery. Doctors Dimitrova and Eitan suggest a liver injury occurred due to a reckless needle insertion. Regardless of which report is correct, this line from Dr. V's belated report which he sent to the coroner, which says, quote, "Dr. Beery inserted an IV cannula line to his McBurney's point to try and decompress the abdomen. A small amount of blood was obtained, which was sent for blood culture," close quote, should represent a reasonable line of inquiry for the police to investigate why this information was withheld for months, as they have credible claims from medical experts that this detail was relevant to the outcome for the baby. I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure out why the police are reluctant to investigate other reasonable lines of inquiry. Having sunk millions of taxpayer funds in one direction, it wouldn't be surprising if they don't want to find evidence that would show they were looking in the wrong direction. According to Dr. Dimitrova and Ms. Davies, the former coroner, there is an ongoing failure to investigate the evidence. Doctors, in turn, withheld evidence of this procedure. This has an impact on the convictions of Lucy Letby. It also has an impact on the gross negligence manslaughter investigation into the hospital managers. I would just like to read through some quotes from some Daily Telegraph articles which reacted to these arrests, starting with this article, "Why These Arrests Are Bad News for Lucy Letby," quoting from the article, "For the police to not only refuse to acknowledge the serious doubts that have arisen since Letby's conviction, but to also double down by arresting the management, feels not only tactical but a little vindictive." In a further article, they say the decision, as in the decision to arrest 3 managers, was met by criticism from legal experts. Ernest Aduwa, if I'm pronouncing that right, a leading criminal defence lawyer and partner at Stokoe Partnership Solicitors, said, "If there is evidence of criminal negligence, it should be pursued, but the timing and method of these arrests suggest a desire to be seen to act rather than a clear, evidence-led necessity." Continuing with the quote, he said, "The police have stated that this does not affect Letby's convictions, but one must question whether these arrests serve any genuine legal purpose at this stage. It is essential that investigations into institutional failings are thorough and impartial, and the focus should remain on establishing facts rather than creating spectacle. The victims' families, the public, and the accused all deserve a process that is fair, transparent, and free from the taint of opportunism." Next, to look at an article in The Guardian which covered Cheshire Constabulary's response to Miss Stephanie Davies. Responding to Davies' concerns about the Lucy Letby case, a Cheshire Police spokesperson described Davies' former position as an administrative role within the Cheshire Coroner's Office and said she was neither formally medically nor legally trained. You can find a job description for a senior coroner's officer online, and there's quite a bit to it, so the police spokesperson's decision to denigrate the role seems quite unprofessional. Miss Stephanie Davies also has a long credentialed educational background.
I have an academic background in forensic psychology, forensic science, more recently forensic medicine.
Continuing with the Guardian article, they say, a disciplinary hearing in February 2023 found allegations of gross misconduct by Stephanie Davies unrelated to the Lucy Letby case to be proved, and had she not resigned, she would have been dismissed without notice. I'm not going to offer any comment on that. The spokesperson said Cheshire Constabulary strongly refute the credibility of these claims. I'm not sure they can legitimately refute these claims, as it appears the information is now on the public record, albeit in the wrong order. We know from Dr. V's email in November that a needle was inserted with the intention of drawing back air, but instead blood was drawn up. It's also known that this information was kept back from the pathologist and also potentially the Horden Review. I assume Miss Stephanie Davies has records of what information was relayed to the pathologist who examined the body. I think it's down to Dr. Horden to comment on whether or not details of the needle aspiration were communicated to her.
If they've missed off that information, what other information have they missed?
So the next issue I'm going to cover is details about Lucy Letby's police interrogation, which I think is more of an issue of incompetence. References to Lucy Letby's police interrogation are contained in the trial transcript. One of the allegations is that she dislodged baby K's breathing tube, which of course came from Ravi Jayaram. The allegation from Ravi Jayaram was that Lucy Letby must have dislodged the tube as the baby was sedated. However, it would emerge at the trial, and especially by the time of the second trial, when it was discovered the police had the swipe data back to front, that the baby would not have been sedated at this time. Reading through this quote, whereas the defendant agrees baby K was paralysed and immobile at the relevant time, Dr. Hall suggests the anaesthetic had yet to take effect. It appears through being excessively trusting, Lucy Letby agreed with the police a detail about the case that would turn out to be incorrect. So in conclusion, I think there are great public doubts originally about the competence of the Lucy Letby investigators, and more recently the question is, are they simply trying to find the mud that sticks to make any difficult questions about the investigation go away? According to Dr. Dimitrova, they are on the brink of a referral to the Independent Office for Police Conduct, who, if they investigate, will hopefully give the public a clearer idea as to whether or not there has been any misconduct.